In the enigmatic universe, is there a path that leads to all mysteries? In this episode, we will unveil the mysterious veil of Chapter 21 of the Tao Te Ching and delve into Laozi's profound description of the Tao, that elusive, indistinct existence. Have you ever wondered why, amidst the complexity of the world, some sages can perceive the essence of life? Laozi, in Chapter 21 of the Tao Te Ching, paints a picture of the Tao that is both formless and omnipresent, distant yet within reach. In this chapter, Laozi uses his unique touch to outline the vague contours of the Tao, leading us into a realm that is both unfamiliar and familiar. Here, we will read the original text of Laozi together to experience the wisdom that transcends words and attempt to capture the truths that dance on the edge of language. Laozi said, "The grandeur of virtue follows the Tao. The Tao as a thing is vague and indistinct. In its obscurity, there is an image. In its indistinctness, there is a thing. In its profound depth, there is essence. Its essence is very real, and within it, there is trust. From ancient times until now, its name has not been lost, by which we can observe the beginning of all things." How do I know the state of all things? By this. This passage describes the Tao, which sounds a bit vague, but at least literally, we can understand it in this way. First, he says that the manifestation of great virtue completely follows the Tao. We always emphasize that when learning anything, it is essential to clarify concepts first. Regardless of whether you understand its meaning, at least literally, Laozi's Tao is simple. It is the source and destination of all things. Remember this sentence: the Tao is the origin and return of all things. As for virtue, Laozi's virtue refers to what all things obtain from the Tao, the nature of all things. Mountains, rivers, the earth, flowers, plants, and trees. Everything that exists has its own virtue. The grandeur of virtue mentioned in this passage, which we translate as the manifestation of great virtue, refers to the entire universe and all things within it, each with its own virtue. If they all perform according to their virtue, what would be the consequence? Because it later says, only follow the Tao. They all go with the Tao, as the Tao gives you virtue and arranges your nature. You naturally live and develop according to the Tao's arrangement. But do not forget, humans are different in this regard because human virtue, that is, human nature, includes cognitive abilities. These four words are the greatest challenge for humans, but also bring the greatest opportunities. Of course, there are positives and negatives. If your cognitive abilities only know how to distinguish, comparing and competing with others every day, then after such distinctions, you find problems, and you can avoid disasters. Avoiding disasters is not enough. You must elevate further, right? Look at all things from the perspective of the Tao. Among all things in the universe, only humans have the possibility of understanding the Tao. He talks about the grandeur of virtue following the Tao, which can also be understood as, those who understand the Tao, who are they? Sages. Their point of view. So he begins to say that the Tao is vague and indistinct. To be honest, this statement has led to many misunderstandings. The original text is, the Tao as a thing is vague and indistinct. What misunderstandings? When I was in university, a teacher who taught Taoism used this statement to prove that Laozi was a materialist. If you read the original text, Tao, as a material thing does not mean that the Tao is material. So using materialism or idealism to label many ancient views may not be appropriate. The terms materialism and idealism in the West did not become clear until after Descartes in modern times. It is not what we imagine today, that everything is material and everything is mind. In fact, from Laozi's statement, you really cannot judge it in this way. He just said that the Tao is vague and indistinct. In fact, the word vague has appeared before. Why is it vague and indistinct? The following explanation clarifies. First, it says vague. In its obscurity, there is an image. In its indistinctness, there is a thing. Profound and ambiguous. In its profound depth, there is essence. Its essence is very real, and within it, there is trust. These 4 sentences describe what? That the Tao has images within it, certain forms. It has things, certain objects. Then, there is essence, which is not illusory. And there is reliable verification. What do these 4 sentences describe? That the Tao has images within it, certain forms. It has things, certain objects. Then, there is essence, which is not illusory. And there is reliable verification. Why does the Tao say these 4 sentences in the end? It still expresses 2 aspects. On the one hand, you cannot say that the Tao exists. If you say it is existent, then there is trouble. Are all things in the universe existent? If all things in the universe are existent, then the Tao is not such an existence. If you say it is non-existent, then there is also trouble. How can nothingness give birth to existence? As for why we often emphasize that Wang Bai's interpretation is worth respecting, Wang Bai points out that the few places in Laozi where nothingness and existence are discussed, the so-called nothingness refers to formlessness and existence refers to form. It is based on human cognitive and sensory abilities, whether you can see it or not, to make a judgment. For humans, formlessness and form are not the true nothingness and existence. It's just that you haven't seen it. It is formless. It says there were no flowers here, and suddenly a flower blooms, which means there were none before because it was formless. Now there is because it has form. After a month or 2, the flower is gone, and how has it become non-existent? It has not really become non-existent. It has decomposed, and you can't see it. So from this perspective, you know that no matter how Laozi describes it, the purpose is the same. To let you know that the Tao is very profound and very mysterious, but it is not the usual existence or non-existence. But in any case, it must exist. Why? If it does not exist, then what you have been talking about is a waste of time and trouble for yourself. Then it continues to say, from now back to ancient times, from now to antiquity. This statement reminds us of what? As previously mentioned, the Tao from ancient times governs the existence of today. So when Laozi talks about the ancient and the modern, it is about the past and the present in time. This paragraph goes from the present back to ancient times, and then says that its name will not fall empty. According to it, one can observe the origin of all things. What does it mean for the name not to fall empty? It means that the Tao, this name, is real, fake. Does it have this thing? Hey, there is the name of the Tao, and he emphasizes that its name will not fall empty, because there is really something. I will call it the Tao later. Our chapter is Laozi's chapter 21, and our chapter up to Laozi's chapter 25. That chapter is the most critical chapter in Laozi's book. Why? Because it mentions how the word Tao came about. There is something that exists as the source and destination, without a name. But humans must have a name, right? You tell me that this thing has no name. How can I recognize it? How can I understand it? But if you give me a name, can I understand it? Maybe not. You tell me this Tao, and I listen and understand it? I still don't understand. You still have to explain that the Tao is the origin and destination of all things. In fact, how can humans understand the origin and destination of all things? The origin was more than 10 billion years ago, and the destination was hundreds of billions of years later. But at least when people think, they know that the existence of anything must have a source and a place to go after it ends, right? So Laozi said, we should do the Tao. The word Tao is the name. It will not fall empty. There must be a source and destination, and it is called the Tao. Once the name of the Tao is set, it will not fall empty. Then what? As we often emphasize, according to it, one can observe the origin of all things. This is important to read the multitude of beginnings. The multitude of beginnings is the revival of all things, the origin of all things. The conclusion is just as we thought. We can know that Laozi's conclusion is very clear, and it must be about the Tao. He said, "How do I know what the origin of all things is like? The basis is here." This is the content of Laozi's chapter. So how do we understand it? Start with the first sentence. The manifestation of great virtue completely follows the Tao. It means that you open your eyes and look at the changes of all things in the universe. All things are constantly being born and extinguished, always developing, and they all follow the arrangement of the Tao. How does the Tao arrange it? I often use two sentences to say. One is that all things will maintain an ecological balance. The second is that this ecological balance has a relationship with the food chain. So together, it can be said that competition among creatures leads to the survival of the fittest. But after humans emerged, they could rely on their wisdom to develop human culture and change some phenomena on the surface of the earth. But no matter how you change, you cannot change the destiny of humans. Humans are also one of all things. So at this time, you know that the so-called all things here, their manifestation of virtue, is arranged according to the Tao. Then there is a long passage describing what the Tao is. He uses only vaguely and indistinctly to explain, using 4 words continuously. Breathing is vague, indistinct, distant, and dark. He also emphasizes that its essence is very real, and the word real is the key, right? It is not fake. There is indeed something existing. This way of description also reminds us that Laozi, at the beginning in chapter 4, had already said that he uses the is method, as if this, as if that. He can't tell you it is definitely what it is, not expressible in language. But there must be a Tao existing. For example, here we can compare the statement of a modern Western philosopher. This philosopher is Descartes. I think many people know that Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Don't forget that relying solely on this statement is not enough to become a great philosopher. When he says, "I think, therefore I am," he means that my essence is the ability to think. But once I think, my existence cannot be denied. But the problem is, Descartes lived from 1596 to 1650, and he has passed away. Where is he now? Can his "I think, therefore I am" only be said when he was alive? So Descartes, in his book, after saying "I think, therefore I am," emphasized a few paragraphs later, "I am, therefore God is." Like me, such a short life can exist, and you can prove the existence of God. When we hear God, don't be repelled or have other thoughts first. You don't have to believe in his religion. But the problem is, the God said by philosophers is almost the same as the Tao said by Laozi, representing the source and destination of all things. So when Descartes says, "I am, therefore God is," it's a bit like Laozi saying that our short existence today is because there is a Tao as the source and destination. So why when we study Western philosophy and look back at our own national studies, we feel that Taoism is really amazing, especially Laozi's thoughts, which can give you a complete system so clearly. So regarding the understanding of the Tao, no matter how you describe it, you cannot ignore one point, which is the 2 sentences used by Zhuangzi: virtue in forgetting the whole virtue, music in forgetting the stop. When you want to catch fish, you need a bamboo basket. If you want to look at the moon, you need to look at the moon pointed by someone else's finger, and you can only look in the direction he points. So later generations regard these 2 sentences as what? When you get the fish, you forget the fish basket, and when you see the moon, you forget the finger. The bamboo basket and the finger are equal to our language and text. They are a carrier. So what's important is the fish. What's important is the music. In other words, what's important is the Tao. No matter how you listen to Laozi's various ways of describing it, in the end, he will highlight it, let you realize that there is a source and destination for all things in the universe. So in this episode, we learn again about Laozi's description of the Tao. This kind of material will appear later. So we know that this is the core concept in Laozi's thinking we have to understand. Laozi's whole thought is to help us realize the Tao, to understand that human existence is not a random accident, as if there is no meaning to life. The Tao lets us exist, and there is his arrangement. And our main task is to realize the Tao, and then we can show different realms of life. These are some of our ideas today.